You know, when you're a kid, a lot of your more outlandish fantasies get plenty of leeway under the simple explanation of, it's just cool. Why would I want this superpower? It's just cool. Why would I make this particular tool or weapon? It's just cool. Why would I want a magical creature, alien, or robot as a friend? It's just cool. Let's stick with that last one for a bit today, shall we? Granted, when you're a grown adult, a lot of these what-if scenarios are rife with possibilities for overanalyzing and critiquing your psychological and emotional motivations and responses. I know, fun stuff for a YouTube video, right? But out of all of the scenarios I threw out there, I genuinely feel that a character like the Iron Giant is about far more than just painting our childhood in a contemporary light. He's all about addressing and challenging societal issues from the point of view of an outsider. In my whole pantheon of favorite characters, I feel like the Iron Giant is the one exception who gives humanity its fair shake.
A little background first. Before the 1999 Brad Bird film, the Iron Giant actually first saw life on the printed page in 1968, with British poet laureate Ted Hughes' novel The Iron Man, a children's story in 5 nights. Further reprintings of the book eventually changed the title and character's moniker from Man to Giant, so as not to confuse him with another well-known mechanized representation of mankind's rocky relationship with weaponization who had just hit the scene. Excelsior! Hughes' book played more as a fairy tale. A very, very surreal fairy tale. The book starts out similar to the film. The giant appears on Earth from God knows where and begins chowing down on farm equipment to survive. The boy Hogarth is there too, and in this version, before befriending the giant, he actually ends up trapping and burying him alive for a few months. Until he digs himself free and comes to a truce with the townspeople he has been inadvertently terrorizing.
That's kind of where the parallels between the novel and the film end, because honestly, the book gets pretty weird after that point.
The rest of the story begins to take on a more philosophical and high-concept science fiction tone, with the appearance of a cosmic space dragon who sings the celestial music of the spheres, and was drawn to Earth because it found humanity's warfare to be a primo source for auditory and visual stimulation, and who challenges the giant to a game of Godzilla-sized chicken, and is forced by the giant to sing for humanity, thus ushering in global harmony, and the giant has a melted earlobe and...
Do yourself a favor, just go read the book and enjoy how much the oddities just start to escalate. Believe me, it's far more enjoyable than having to research the author himself. Googling Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath will genuinely bum you out.
And the Brad Bird film isn't even the first attempt to adapt this story to another medium. The Who's Pete Townshend created a 1989 rock musical with John Lee Hooker as the Giant and Nina Simone as the Space Dragon,
thus creating the greatest rock opera about giant robots and space dragons ever.
The 1993 sequel to the book, called The Iron Woman, gets even trippier, with black burp bubbles, spider gods, and a Mother Nature on the warpath narrative that would have been right at home in Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing. Around this time, Warner Brothers optioned the rights to the original novel. Oh hi, executive producer Pete. And we got the underappreciated 1999 animated classic, starring Rachel from Friends, Will Smith's dead buddy from Independence Day, Shooter McGavin, and of course, Vin, I can't wait to get paid bajillions for 5 minutes in a sound booth, Diesel.
Yes!
I'm Groot, indeed. You lucky bastard.
I make fun, but Diesel's performance as the Giant honestly ties into a lot of what I appreciate about the character. The minimalist approach to the Giant's verbal communication makes how he comprehends our world and its rules all the more emotionally resonant, so that when he does vocalize something Hogarth has taught him, you feel as though the lesson has finally sunk in.
No, don't do that! That's the kind of stuff that makes them shoot at you.
Compare this to the Hughes novel, where the giant starts as the mute to monosyllabic character that he is in the film, but within the span of just a chapter, both he and the space dragon are suddenly very loquacious and start talking like highfalutin aristocrats challenging each other to a duel.
And who knows, maybe that's something that could have been explored in a sequel to the film. But I feel limiting the giant's vocabulary gives him a true outsider perspective, and gives him a chance to kind of shine more in expression and animation.
His expressions and movements may emulate the simplistic behavior of a child or the instinctual response of an animal, but they also emulate the behavior of a being that is experiencing a completely alien world and culture for the first time. This is a very Hughesian theme, laced throughout the writer's poetry and other works. It can be described as innocent savagery, an honest, unfiltered, and succinct form of expression that takes root in more animalistic or naturalistic actions and behaviors, or at least what is perceived as such from someone else's point of view.
We can't go there yet. People just aren't ready for you.
Be honest with yourself. If you were stranded on an alien world with no knowledge of the culture, customs, or natural law, would you act any differently than the giant does? Or at the very least, is it safe to assume that your actions would be perceived by the locals as unnatural, alien, or simple?
I feel like when we're younger and watch movies that have this particular narrative, the premise of a young idealist that takes responsibility for a fantastical companion, we tend to oversimplify and not give the companion enough credit. It would be so easy to convey a story where the giant is just a big, bumbling galoot that Hogarth constantly needs to hold by the hand to get through the world. But Brad Bird and company are able to effectively convey that there is more going on behind those giant spotlight eyes. The giant's intuition and sense of self is conveyed very well throughout the film. Despite his apparent amnesia, a sliver of him recognizes what he truly is capable of, both the good and the bad. But through his actions and behaviors and his relationship with Hogarth, there is something else at play besides the innocent savagery. The need to rebel against the innocent savagery.
That is the bittersweetness of the movie. We're given a glimpse of what he could be capable of before it's sadly cut short. Spoilers and hankies from here on out, folks.
He's a weapon. A big gun that walks.
I'm not gun.
The giant wants to do better by Hogarth and the other townsfolk. He wants to show he's not just hardwired to be the weapon everyone perceives him to be. He wants to show he can evolve and change and acclimate to our world without having to sacrifice his individuality. Ironically, it's another character fully embracing his own innocent savagery that's been propelled by propaganda, fear, and paranoia that forces the giant to step up. In the book, there's really not much of that pomp and pageantry to him integrating into society. It just kind of happens. In the film, we get to witness that moment. And it is endearing and heartbreaking all at once. The giant isn't a simpleton in need of education. He isn't a pet to domesticate. He isn't a weapon to neutralize. He's much like his in-universe inspiration Superman. He's an outsider, being welcomed in without having to give up what makes him unique. In many ways, he's the envy of a lot of us in this day and age. A newcomer devoid of being jaded, but who is able to take on the ugliness of the world as it is revealed to him in stride.
Ultimately, my appreciation for the Iron Giant as a character comes down to the core belief that he carries within him at all times. That no matter how strange or alien the world may seem, he still continues to find new ways to see the remarkable in everything. And that's just cool.